Mhm. Hey guys, it's David Rhodes in St. Petersburg, Florida, here to share with you today on some tips on how to hire contractors. Like me, a lot of you out there that are either doing rehabs or have rentals, or thinking about doing rehabs and have rentals, and maybe struggling with hiring the right contractors. So I got some tips for you on hiring the right contractors. So the first tips I'm gonna give you just like a basic tips to make sure, just an overall every contractor, some questions that you want to make sure that you're asking to make sure that you're hiring the right person. And these are just some things that I'll ask people in general in conversation when I'm talking to them over the phone. And they're pretty basic stuff. Like the first thing I ask somebody once I start talking to them is, how long have you been in business? That's important to me because I just want to see how long they've been doing what they say they've been doing. One of the next things I asked them is, are you licensed and insured and bonded? All three of those: licensed, insured, bonded, and do you have workman's comp? Because workman's comp is very important. Another question I ask along those same lines is, the workers that you have working with you, are they covered by your company? Workman's comp, insurance, all those above. Do you give free estimates? When I get estimates, I don't want to pay for them. I want to make sure they give free estimates. And how do you charge? Do you charge me by the hour or by the job? I like to be charged by the hour. A lot of contractors like to be charged with time and material. That's not a benefit for me. I want a contract telling me how much you're going to charge me for the job. A fixed bid. Yeah. When do you get paid? A lot of contractors say they need to get half of the money up front. Well, that doesn't work for me normally. I normally like to see a little work done before I start dishing out money, unless I've had that contractor work with me before. And unless they're buying a lot of materials and the materials are delivered to the job, then I could pay out money. Do you give warranties on your work? That's important to me. Somebody does something. I had an example today. I had a contractor go out for me today, did a plumbing repair, and I get a call from my tenant at about an hour ago, and the plumbing repair, there's something wrong with it. Well, I got that contractor back on the phone. He's over there doing that, fixing that repair right now. Now, if that contractor didn't go back and make that repair, then they don't stand behind the work. They don't give me warranties, so I wouldn't use them again. But that's just an example, a real life example that happened to me tonight. Do you have references? And if I approve your estimate, when can the work start and when will it be completed? And one important to me is, are you willing to work on a performance-based contract? And those that are not familiar with a performance-based contract, it's simply what I'm saying is the contract is structured around performance-based. They do work, they get paid. So that's just some questions that I'll ask any contractor that I'm working with, whether it's electrical, plumbing, HVAC, framer, it doesn't matter. Any of them. That's just some general questions. There's probably some more that you may have, but that's just a list of questions that you can pop through real quick, and you can get a really good feel of who you're talking to and whether you want to use them or not. I try to always use, first of all, I am a licensed contractor. So I hire subs a lot of times. And a lot of these subs, they don't have to have the same license that I have, but they still need to be licensed and insured. But a lot of times I'll use Craigslist, and I'll post ads out there on Craigslist, and I'm very specific about what I'm looking for. And I'll get people to call me, and when they call me, I have some questions that I'll ask those different trades. So I'm gonna share some of those questions with you tonight. And these are really basic questions. If you're in any of these trades, you'll say, man, that's really simple. But believe me, I'll ask some of these questions to people who say they've been doing work for 10 years in this trade, and they don't know the answer. Well, when that happens, when I ask somebody a basic question in their trade and they don't know the answer, and that tells me really, really quick that they haven't been in that trade long. I don't want to do business with them. So I just skip them and move on to the next person. I'm gonna start with painting. And I'm gonna start with painting because we've all had people paint for us well, maybe not everybody, but there's a lot of people out there that say they're painters and they're not really painters. Can everybody paint? Yes. Anybody can pick up a brush, put some paint on the wall. Anybody can pick up a roller, slap some paint on the wall. But that doesn't mean you know how to paint. There's some things that are very, very important about painting that you need to know, or it could cause you some problems down the road. But here's some simple questions that I ask painters, and they should know it right off the bat. A question I always ask is, tell me how you tell the difference between oil-based paint and latex paint, or tell me how if something's been painted with oil-based or latex. I guess that's a better way to say it. Tell me how you can tell something's been painted with latex or oil-based. And that comes with really, it's very common in trim. A lot of times trim is painted in oil-based. And if you paint it with latex, when it's painted in oil-based, you're gonna have problems. But the answer to that question is, some painters are gonna say, like my uncle's been painting for 40 years. He'll say, I can look at it and tell you, I can scratch it and I'll know. But I say that's fine. But if I had to do it, how can I tell it? The answer is denatured alcohol. You simply take denatured alcohol, put on a rag, you rub a piece of trim. If paint comes off, it's latex. If it doesn't, it's oil. So that's a simple question. If you've ever had anything painted with latex over top of oil, you see it peeling, you know what I'm talking about. All right, another question just a really basic question that every painter's been doing it for a long time should know is, what's the best type of brush to use with oil-based paint? The answer to that is a natural brush or a natural bristle, not a man-made fiber, is the best. Now, they have come out over the years with synthetic fibers that still work, but a painter who's been painting for a long time, they'll spit it right out in a minute. I always paint with natural when I do oil-based. So if somebody says that, you know they've been painting for a long time. And I use oil-based questions a lot because oil-based you have to know what you're doing to work with that. If you know what you're doing to work with oil-based paints, I know that you're a painter. Another question that I'll use is, how do you thin out oil-based paint? And the answer to that is metal spirits or paint thinner. And sometimes I ask, how do you thin out latex paint? And you'll be surprised how many people tell me that you thin it out with paint thinner. You don't use paint thinner with latex paint, so it's a water-based paint. Another good question you can ask somebody that they've been painting for a long time is, with latex paint, what do you use, Penetrol or Floetrol? That's something to help you paint smoother. Penetrol is used for oil-based paint. Floetrol is used for latex. So the question to that, answer to that would be Floetrol. Now, your average Joe who says they know how to paint, they just slap and paint on the wall, they would never even know what Floetrol or Penetrol is. So they're not a painter. Which roller, here's a really good one that only experienced painter would know. Which roller puts out more splatter? A polyester roller or a lambskin roller? A polyester roller puts out more splatter. Again, that was only a question that a real painter would know. And here's one I like to ask all painters, because I really believe this, no matter what you're painting, what's the most important part of painting to you? And most painters are going to tell you, being neat and the prep work. If you're neat and the prep work is done properly, then the paint job's gonna be good. They come out with there may be some other things that are important, but it's really, really important that you do the prep work right before you paint, or your painting job's not turn out as well as it should. Those are just a handful of questions that I ask painters that you can use to ask painters and get a really good painter.
So Kelly Anderson has a question on if you require workman's comp. So she's a drywall taper and painter, and she doesn't have workers' comp, but does work for the largest residential contractor in the area, although her subcontractor might. So what are your thoughts on that? Okay,
every situation is different. If I had a relationship with, what's her name? Kelly, and Kelly has shown me that she can work for me, and she didn't have a bunch of people walking around on stilts doing drywall, yeah, I may allow her to do that. If I had her on a commercial job and I didn't have workman's comp on her and she didn't have workman's comp, no, I would not allow her to do it. So do I use people without workman's comp? Yes, I do. But it's people I have relationships with. I'm just not going to, and it's depending on what kind of job. I'm not going to put a roofer on a roof without workman's comp or insured, because if he falls off that roof, I'm going to be in trouble. So it just depends on what you're doing, but hopefully that answered that question. She can help us out with some drywall questions. All right. The next one I'm going to be talking about is electrician. And again, these are very, very basic questions. So if you're an electrician, I hope I don't insult you, but you'd be amazed at the answers I get with these. One of the questions, this is just a few, but one of them is on a receptacle or an outlet, where is the ground located? The answer to that is on the bottom left. On every receptacle or outlet that you plug something in, when you wire it up, the ground is located on the bottom left. If they don't know that, that one simple question right there, they don't know that, they don't know anything about electrical. But some other ones I asked, and I normally followed out with, what else is located on the left side? The answer to that is the neutral wire. The neutral wire is on a receptacle or outlet, is always on the left side of the ground. I got that. All right. What size wire is used with a 15 amp breaker? The answer to that is a 14 gauge wire. Then what size is used for a 20? It's a 12 gauge wire. And what size is used for a 30? That's a 10 gauge wire. Now, why is that important? Well, if you take a 20 amp breaker and you put a 14 gauge wire in it, you have created a hazard there. So you got to make sure whoever's doing your wiring, especially if they're putting in breakers for you, they understand what those breakers are. And I have popped open panels with 50 amp breakers with 12 gauge wire on them. You can't do that. You're creating a hazard. Here's somebody who says they've been doing electrical for a long time. I got this one from my dad. My dad was a German electrical for a long time. He's like, every electrician should know this. How many travelers does a three-way switch have? And the answer is 2. It has 2 travelers. Now, only an experienced electrician would know that. They might know some of this other stuff, but if they've never wired a three-way switch, they would have no idea what I was talking about. What does GFI stand for? GFI stands for ground fault interrupter. Then I'll follow right up. They know that. Where is that used at? GFIs, people who have in their house, they probably see it. They're commonly used in wet areas. So bathrooms, kitchens, basements, outside areas, GFIs, or anywhere where a person could be shot, normally a ground fault, a GFI is somewhere in that area. So that is some electrical questions for you. That's your electrician that you're going to add on Craigslist. They said they've been doing it for 50 years. You hit them with those questions, see if they know it. I would start a 50-year guy with that three-way switch, if he knew that. All right, the next one I'm moving on to is plumbing. A lot of us have plumbing issues. We got to hire a contractor plumbing to come out and do some work for us. So just some basic questions I like to ask if they say they know what they're doing. Very easy one is, what do you use when setting a toilet to stop wastewater leaks? And that's a wax ring. That's when you set the toilet, you put in a wax ring, that stops your wastewater leaks. Here's a simple one. I was putting this thing together tonight, and I asked Nicole this one, and she got this one wrong.
You're selling me out.
Which side is the cold water on? Now, you think that's an easy question, but she got it wrong. A lot of people say they're plumbers and don't know. The answer is it's on the right side. Your cold water is on the right side. They might get those two right, but here's a question that you can normally ask somebody, weeds them out really quick. What is a P-trap used for? A lot of people know what a P-trap is, know what it looks like. They know it's under their sink. They've seen it, but they really don't know what it's there for. A P-trap is in place to stop, the answer to that is to stop sewer gases from entering the home or house or building. That's what the P-trap. The P-trap holds water so gases can't come back into your house. So that's a really good question. You can ask somebody said they're experienced plumber. And you can ask them where P-traps are located. They're in vanities, under sinks, but they're in a lot of places that you don't see them in your house. It's basically anywhere the gas can come back in through the plumbing system, there's a P-trap in place. Here's another really, really good one I like to ask. Somebody says they have experience. Why does my plumbing system have vents? Well, why does plumbing have vents in our homes? And the answer to that is to give somewhere for the gases to escape. So it can't come back in the house, it lets the gases out of the house. To remove the sewer gases is why your system has ventilation. Here's another question. How do you repair copper pipes without soldering them? And the answer to that is shark bites or gator bites. It's a new thing that's been on the market, not really new anymore. It's been on the market for a little while that you can use, that you can repair copper pipes without soldering. Any professional plumber would know that. Some plumbers don't even like them. They won't even use them. They're solder anyway. But we use them all the time in our business. We use shark bites a lot. They work really well. All right. This is simple drywall questions I like to ask because I need a lot of drywall repairs, and I want to make sure that people know what they're doing. At least halfway know what they're doing when it comes to drywall. So I ask some simple questions. The first one I'll ask somebody, if they say they didn't have to do drywall repairs, is what do you use to repair holes in drywall? And I get all kind of answers, but the answer that I'm looking for is it depends on the size of the repair. Every hole is different. A quarter hole is different than a 1.5-foot hole. Everything is repaired different. So the answer to that is it depends on the size of the hole. They tell you caulk, then I don't know if they know what they're doing. Another one I like to ask, and I ask this a lot, and they have no idea what this is. What is 5-minute sheetrock mud? It's very simple. It's basically what it says. It's 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes or less sometimes, or just a little bit more. When you mix that up to make that repair, it's used mostly to do small jobs, and only experienced people with drywall really mess with 5-minute mud because it sets up really, really fast. If somebody can work 5-minute mud, they normally can work some drywall. What size drywall is typically used on walls? And what I'm looking for here is the thickness. I'm saying typically you're going to use a 1/2 inch. 4 by 8 by 1/2, but you're typically going to use a 1/2 inch on the walls. Sometimes you can laminate with thinner, but as long as they say 1/2 inch, I'm okay with that. Then I ask a follow up with that, what size drywall is used on ceilings? And what I'm looking for there is it depends on the framing spacing. Because it depends on the spacing, whether it's 16 on center or 24 on center, depends on what size drywall you can use. But you're typically going to use somewhere between, you can use a 1/2 to a 5/8. And then another one I ask is what is in my area, we do a lot of orange peel, we do a lot of texturing. So it's a very common thing that we use here. It's called a hopper. And I ask them, what is a hopper used for? They don't know what a hopper is used for, then they don't know how to texture. Hopper here is used for shooting orange peel, shooting knockdown. That's the device that we use here. And they also have machines that you can use. But if you've been in the drywall business for a long time, you know what a hopper is. All right. Here's some questions that I use for a tile person. And sometimes you hire people who say they know what they're doing, they get on a job, and you find out they don't. We had that happen to on a rehab that we were working just a couple weeks ago. I guess we didn't ask the right questions. But here's some tile questions I'll use. How do you keep the spaces even? some old tile layers that say they can eyeball it, and believe it or not, some of them can, but most people can't. And the answer I'm looking for there is tile spacers. Just a simple spacer you drop in to keep all your joints the same. When do you use unsanded grout? Unsanded grout is very simple. It's grout without sand. You use sanded. The answer to that is smaller than 1/8. Typically, unsanded grout is normally used like 1/16 or butt joints, but they didn't have any grout, and it tends to shrink. So they're typically used there. So the answer to that would be 1/8 or smaller. What size trowel do you use when you're setting tile? The answer to that is it depends on what tile you're setting. It depends on the size of the tile. There's all different types of trowels, but it really depends on every size, depends on what trowel you use. So I'm looking for, depends on the size of trowel. You don't use the same trowel to set a 4x4 as you do an 18x18. Two different types of trowels. What do you cut tile with? The answer I'm looking for is a wet saw, or a wet tile saw, a tile saw, or a side grinder with a tile cutting blade on it. They tell me a skill saw, and they hadn't laid much tile. Oh, here, this is the question I like. How do you get tile under door jambs? So when you're laying tile, there's a door jamb there. The tile has to get under the door jamb. Now, I've been answered, well, we just cut around the door jamb. To cut the tile around the door jamb. That's not the answer I'm looking for. A professional doesn't cut tile around the door jamb. You don't see the tile. You see the door jamb on top of the tile. So what I'm looking for is a jamb cutter. You cut the jamb, you slide the tile underneath it. If they're not using a jamb cutter, then they can't lay tile for me. So one other thing I got on, because we do a lot of laminate, so I just noted this down real quick. It's not tile, but I do ask a few on laminate. But the biggest thing you can move people out with laminate for them real quick is when you lay a laminate floor, what goes down first? And the answer to that is a moisture barrier goes down first. Some type of moisture barrier goes down first. And nowadays, the foam that the laminate slides over, it already has the moisture barrier in it, and that's fine. But what I'm looking for is a moisture barrier goes down first. All right, I think that's all the contractor questions I have. So if you got any questions for me, shoot at me. If you want me to go back over something, I can. I know there's a lot of other contractors out there that we could cover. If you got questions about them, what kind of questions I ask, be more than happy to. I will talk about roofers real quick. I didn't jot any notes down on roofers. Roofing just in general, if a roof job is being done for me, first of all, it's going to be a licensed contractor. He's going to be insured. We're going to pull a permit. You're going to rip the roof off. We're going to take it back to bare wood. We're going to make the repairs, dry it in, put the shingles down. We're not going to roof over top of shingles. It's going to be done the way it should be. The biggest issue that I have with roofers is in repairs. And I've asked roofers a lot of questions. The thing about roofers who do repairs, they've been doing it for a long time. They know it, and they laid a lot of roofs. But my experience with roofers, if you hire somebody to do a repair, you need to be there. I don't say you have to get on the roof, but you need to be there in person, at least see what they're doing. Because I know that they will spend 30 minutes and charge you $500 for it in a minute. And roofers, the experience I've had with them, you may have a good one, hard to find. I'm talking about the roofers that do just repairs, not the guy that puts on full roofs. You find somebody on Craigslist to come and fix the leak for you. Their warranty is when you see those tail lights. They're not coming back ever to repair anything. They're very, very hard to find good guys. You're better off finding somebody who's licensed, insured, and dealing with them. You're going to pay more money, but I would still be there to watch them. They'll spend 30 minutes and charge you $500 a minute.
So Kelly was kind enough to write in some additional drywall hanger questions.
Cool.
So she said, where do you place your butt joints?
That's a good one.
And the answer is to stagger the joints above and below the doors and windows, not by miter joints if trimming with wood, and use 14 foot when possible to minimize joints.
Sometimes I'll just ask, what a butt joint is. But yes, that's very good.
And then there was a question, why should the contractor be bonded? What does this mean, and what are the implications if they're not bonded?
Well, bond is just additional insurance, and really, if the job is gonna be like over $500, something goes wrong, they're bonded, they're insured for anything that went wrong on that job. The bonding will take care of it. Some municipalities, when you're a contractor like I am, they require you to be bonded. Some of them don't. So some contractors that you're using, they already may be bonded. And in your area, that's probably something you could just put in, just Google real quick. There's a contract required to have to be bonded in whatever county you're in, and you can check it out. In our area, some municipalities you do, some you don't. But it's additional insurance for your protection. If the job's gonna be over $500, I would recommend to make sure they were bonded.
And then there was another question on what's the best way to find a contractor?
Well, I use different things. The best way to find a contractor, in my experience, is word of mouth, referral from somebody. But sometimes those referrals are so busy you can't use them. So I use Craigslist a lot to find contractors. But when you use Craigslist to find contractors, you have to write a very, very detailed ad on not that you're just looking for somebody, but you got to say you have to be licensed, you have to be insured. I'm gonna need to see your license insurance. I got very detailed ads that I run when I'm looking for rehab crews, and I specify that I'm not going to babysit you. You're going to work on a performance-based contract. But whatever you really want, you put it in the ad. And licensed, insured, bonded, if you want those, you put it in that ad. That gets out the riffraff. You don't have a bunch of people calling you, and then you'll get real contractors calling you.
So then we have another question. Do you ask for customer references, number of years experience? Would you ask to see the contractor's work if that was possible? And then what are some red flags?
Yes, maybe they want to when I first started, but that was some of the questions I will when we first started. Yes, I'll ask for references. Yes, I'll ask how many years they've been in business. If some of the red flags is if they don't have any references, or they give you references and you call them and numbers are no good. Red flags if they don't have a portfolio to show you. Most contractors who do work, finish work, especially trim carpenters, tile layers, granite installers, any kind of finish work, painting, most of those guys got a portfolio. They want to show you their work. They want you to see it. So you can ask to see their portfolio. Somebody just getting started, or they don't have good references, or they're not proud of their work, they're not going to have those type of things. So portfolios, a lot of them carry them around.
How long does it normally take a contractor to give an estimate, say for inside out remodel, including roof and possibly a foundation too?
Everybody is different when it comes to giving estimates, but I believe if it's your business and you do it every day, there's no reason you can't run an estimate in 48 hours, unless it's very something extensive that they have to get another and maybe the roofer had to bring another contractor in. Typically, a general contractor doesn't do the roof and they bring in another contractor, but still, if they're in the business, 48 hours is pretty typical. They can get you an estimate on it. That's what I would require. But if you're having problems, just when you meet with the person, tell them and put that in your ad. If you're running out of great, my estimates have to be back within 48 hours. Don't be scared to tell people things that you won't. You're not going to get them unless you ask for them.
Great. What scheduled payment should you follow to pay the contractors?
Well, that depends on whether you're paying for the material or not. But one recommendation I'm going to give you right now, if they're not a licensed, insured, bonded contractor, you don't pay them a dime until they do some work, unless you've got a relationship with that person. Especially if you're supplying the material for them And I do that a lot with new contractors because I'm not going to give them $2,000 on a $4,000 job and hope they get half the work done. I'm going to get some work done. So typically on a new contractor for me, I'll supply the material. I require them to work at least a week before I pay them. Because if I'm supplying the materials, there's no need to pay them until they do some work. If they're a licensed, bonded, insured contractor, they got a good reputation. You Google them, you check them out, and it's a roofer, for example, and it's an $8,000 job, and he's asking $4,000 up front. That's normal. The materials are probably close to that. You know, they're probably a little bit more than that. So that's normal. It just depends on the situation. But if you're working with a contractor and it's a long job, you should be set up on draws. And you should control the job, the draw. The contractor should control the draw. You should have it set out from the beginning when you're going to pay them and what needs to be done in order for them to get paid. So there's got to be some guidelines. And if they don't meet those guidelines, then you can't pay them. And that's got to be understood up front when you start the job. And trust me, if you sit down with your contractor and you tell them up front, this is how it's going to be, and then you stick to that, you're not going to have a problem with it. If they have a problem with it when it's time to get paid because they didn't get something done, then they're the wrong contractor. And I have fired contractors in the middle of a job. That's just doing business. You know, I always pay everybody. I never short pay anybody. I always pay everybody. So, but you know, sometimes you have to let people go. That's just part of doing business.
Is it better to get permits in my personal name or my business name, or let the contractor get permits on their terms?
Okay. I'm going to talk to you about what I'm experienced with. If the residence that you're working on is not in your name, in my area, you can't pull the permit. Only a licensed contractor can pull the permit. If the residence is in your name and you're working on your own house, then you can pull the permit. So the answer to that is, unless it's in your name, you can't pull the permit anyway. So the contractors have to pull the permits.
It would be in their business name if they bought it.
You can't, you can't pull permits in the LLC name. And this is in Florida. We own several properties in our LLCs. Just because I'm a contractor doesn't mean I can go down there as owning, you know, our corporation, go down and pull a homeowner's permit, is what we call them here, homeowner's permit. I have to pull the builder's permit, I have to get a roofer to pull permits, plumber to pull the permit, electrician, because that's a business. Only in most municipalities are that way. You can only pull permits on your residence if you live in the residence in your name, and then you can pull homeowner permits. You can pull them all, and you can hire subcontractors or contractors to come in and do the work, and then it gets inspected just like any other job.
Okay. What would be some of the contractor magic buttons? So what are some key highlighted problems to tackle immediately which can cause you to fire your contractor? And then do you have any website for training or clubs that you would recommend? I'm gonna just talk about contractors right quick. Red flags. Red flags is you, from the beginning of the job, no matter ever how long your remodel is, if it's 2 or 3 weeks or what it is, you have a designated timeline that you're following. If that timeline falls behind the first week, that's a red flag. If it falls behind the second week, if it falls behind the first week and like you did the job once or twice that first week, that second week you need to be paying attention to what's going on in that job. You need to be there 4 or 5 times if people are working. So when a job falls behind early on, that's a huge red flag. Another red flag, if you paid somebody money and you go to the job site and it's empty, a huge red flag. Another red flag for me is if I pay somebody on Friday and they need money on Monday, a huge red flag. Something's going on. I just paid them. Why do they need money again? As far as clubs, I don't have any clubs or anything I go to other than REI clubs. I do those, you know, investor meetings and stuff. But no, I don't have any of those, any type of clubs or anything. But anything you want to find is online. If a contractor says they know how to build a shower pan and you go and look at it, and the shower pan you don't think it's been done right, look it up online. You can see how it should be done. And look,
It's your house. You are in control. Don't be afraid to step up and say, hey, Mr. Contractor, you're not doing that right. Or I don't think you're doing that right. Can we look at this? I mean, I'm not saying being an a-hole, but if you think something not being done right, it's your house. You will be the one in the long run that's going to have to face with any consequence it is. It's your job. So you got to be responsible. Don't be scared to call anybody out.
I think you already covered this, but what is the down payment you should agree to pay the contractor? Generally, they're asking for 10 or 20%.
All right. Again, 10 or 20%. Everybody's different, but me, I'm just tell you what I do. If I hire somebody that I've never worked with, and they ask me for 10 or 20%, it's not going to work like that. I'm going to set the guidelines. I'm going to put them on a performance-based contract. I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Contractor, I'm going to pay for the materials. You're going to work this week. At the end of this week, if this is done, these items are done, then I'm going to pay you this amount of money. At the end of the second week, or if these items are done, then I'm going to pay you this amount of money. Now, once I've established a relationship with a contractor and I can trust them, then if they want 10% down, that might not be an issue. If they're buying materials, if I'm buying materials, I don't know why they need money down for a job they hadn't done any work on. So if I supply the materials, I won't pay until work is done, typically 1 week into the job. If they're supplying the materials and they're a licensed, bonded, insured contractor, then I wouldn't have a problem giving 10%.
What is the best way to save yourself from getting sued by a contractor who gets hurt on the job?
Make sure they got workman's comp. Make sure they're insured. Make sure they're bonded. Have them give you that information. Make them, if they give you the license, the insurance, the workman's comp, then if they get hurt on the job, then it's their responsibility. I don't think that's never happened. I've never seen somebody who was all insured, bonded, try to sue anybody. So if they're a true professional, you don't have to worry about it. Now, if you're hiring people off Craigslist and they don't have their license insurance, you got to be careful. You better have somebody. You got to be careful what you let them do. You don't hire somebody off Craigslist and put them on a roof. You don't do that. That's very, very dangerous for you, for them. But you don't hire somebody off Craigslist and put them in electrical. You don't put them in something they can get hurt. Hire somebody off Craigslist to clean your yard. You might find somebody to do some painting for you. If you got somebody who's running your jobs, let them do the hiring. And then if anything, you just don't let them don't put those kind of people in situations that they can get hurt, which would hurt you.
How about getting added to their insurance?
Yes, you can be added as an additional insured. Yes, you could.
Do you typically do that?
I don't typically do that, but as a contractor, I have had them ask me to do it. It happens a lot. Like when subs, if I hire a sub, I can ask me as an additional insured if they're licensed and insured. And if I work for other contractors, they'll have me add them. But again, if they're doing everything right and you check all their paperwork, then you don't have to worry about it.
How do you establish? You talked about a week before you pay them. How do you establish your time frames? Because I don't know how fast everything normally gets done.
Okay, I'll let the contractor tell me when they're going to finish the job. And most of the time I add something to it. Let's say, for example, I hire a contractor to do a rehab for me. And he estimates the rehab is going to be 3 weeks. And I look at the job and I say, this is probably going to take a little bit longer than 3 weeks. I'm going to give you 4 weeks. I have a scope of work. Before I even hire it, before that contractor goes on that job to give me a bid, I've already laid out a scope of work. I give Mr. Contractor a scope of work. All right, Mr. Contractor, go tell me what it's going to cost to do this and give me a time frame. So then when I lay out my performance contract with them, I have a performance-based contract, and it breaks out when you're going to get paid, how much you're going to get paid. We go over the scope of work. We look at the scope of work and say, these items need to be done to get this amount of money. So I guess the answer to that is have a scope of work, have the contractor give you their time frame, sit down with the contractor and talk about it, So everybody's on the same page, and then stick to the contract and the scope of work. Don't veer off of it. If something happens and there's a legitimate reason, like it's your fault because you had to order some cabinets, the cabinets didn't come in, then that's, that's something you can adjust. But if the house needed to be painted and all the paint's there and it didn't get painted, there's really no excuse for that. They gave you the time frame. Hold them to the fire. And if they can't get it done, then get through that job and move on. Like I said, I've fired contractors in the middle of a job. So sometimes you have to do it, just move on. That's why you don't get locked. That's why when you hire a new contractor, don't pay them for work they haven't done, because you might not see them. I heard a story just yesterday where a corporation hired a contractor to do 2 remodels for them for $26,000. They paid them $13,000, then paid them another $13,000, or another, maybe it was like $8,000. Paid him like $21,000. The man didn't have a contractor's license. He got red tagged. The job got held up. He split. So this is a corporation paid this man $21,000, and guess what they had to do? They had to hire a real licensed contractor, pay them another $20,000 to get the job done. Those things are real life. It happens. So don't pay somebody for work they haven't done. That's why the scope of work's important. Look at it. It doesn't take. You can walk around the house. If they say it's going to take them 3 or 4 days to paint a house, you look at your house. That might be stretching it, but a week may be good. So just don't get in the habit of paying people ahead of time, and you got to treat your contractors as they're not friends. You treat them fair. They're not friends. I know a lot of them, they sing the blues to us. You want to help them out, but just don't put you in a situation where you pay somebody in advance and you have to pay somebody else to do the work. I try not to pay anybody in advance. I always hold back. That way, if they don't complete the work, I have the money to pay somebody else.
Is it safe to assume, in order to avoid discrepancies with contractors, that it's best to establish a network, including contractors, that you'll continue to use on an ongoing basis?
Yes, that's one. If you're in the real estate business, hopefully you have some REI clubs there. If you go to the REI club, even if you're new there, you go there a few weeks or 3 weeks or a month, and you see the same contractors coming back to that club, people are using them. People are going to. They've been using them. You can ask other people how long have you used them before, how long they've been around. If they've been around for years, most likely they're doing pretty decent work and they're not hurting people. If they just show up out of the blue, if you've been going to this meeting for months and you got somebody show up and they give you a pitch that they do roof work, I might be a little hesitant. Then you need some referrals. But yes, networking and referrals from other people. All the time. I have other investors in this town that I work with doing investment. If I need something done and I don't have the right contractor, I'll send them a text. I'll call them and say, hey, who does your roof repair? Who does your AC work? Do you like them? Can I trust them? How long have they been working for you? And then, all right, I'll try to use them. But yes, networking and using other people's contractors is a great thing to do.
And then there's some, Kelly was kind enough to offer some additional questions for tapers too. So ask if they rosin floors and cover finished surfaces such as fireplaces, showers, doors, windows. How many coats of mud do they use? What tools do they use? Trowel, knife, mechanical, do they clean up? Another thing is spray primer after sanding. It helps to seal the entire surface and knocks the dust off.
Yep, that's a good one. That's a real good one. I've seen a lot of drywall texture come back off the wall because they didn't prep the surface, didn't hit it with primer. There was too much dust on it when they shot it with texture. That happened in a remodel last year. Now I'd hired a great contractor. He came back and he fixed it. But that's just making sure you hire the right person.
Reynolds wondering if we could give him a copy of the performance-based contract that we use. I'm sure we're happy to share. I don't know where we would post it. So
yeah, I'm not sure where we would post that contract. I'm on Facebook. My name is David Rhodes. If you just friend me and then ask me to send you my contract, tell me you saw me, I'll be more than happy to share it with you.
What do you think about the contractor's pricing guide?
The contractor's pricing guide.
And then it says RS means. I don't know what that means.
I think you're talking about, I took my contractor's test several years ago. There was a pricing guide. Maybe it was something similar to what you're talking about, where you look at the different jobs. When it comes to pricing, you know, I think every job is based on, it's just individual. I don't know if that pricing guide, it's probably a good guide. I mean, somebody did a lot of research on it. So it's probably a good guide. I'm not going to say it's 100% accurate either way, high or low. But if you're just trying to get bids, somebody did the research. Somebody has done some research on that. So I would say that it's probably a decent guide. I know when I was going through my contracting class that we had a guide similar to that. I was looking at it and it seemed to be a little high at sometimes, it seemed to be a little low at sometimes. So I think it just varies.
Sometimes it's by area.
And it is by area too, no doubt. Because I mean, what I pay somebody here is different. I have real estate here in Florida. I have real estate in Alabama. The contractors get paid different. It's just two different states. And it's really just two different areas. I mean, I'm in a metropolitan area. There's a smaller area, so I don't typically pay as much there as I do here.
So going back to the delay because the cabinets don't come in, but time is still ticking. So Charlie's asking, should he still be charged by the contractor for this idle time or not? Well,
hopefully the contractor's got some other stuff to do. And we got a rehab we're working on right now. And the cabinets were scheduled to be in last Friday, and they just got there today. But they didn't stop working. They kept working. So there should be plenty to do. I mean, I wouldn't get the whole job done and then put the cabinets in at the end. That's just part of your rehab. So, but what I'm just trying to, I guess what I'm saying is, if something's delayed, there's normally other things to do on a job, as long as it's run effectively. So they should be charging for what they've done. And that's when you look back at the scope of work. The cabinets might not have been installed, but they might have got the bathroom finished. Yeah, then you can look at the justified prices. You say, okay, I can pay you for that, but I can't pay you for the cabinets.
All right, great. I don't see any other questions, and I know that there's a little bit of a delay, but were there any other questions before we wrap it up for this evening?
Okay.
Any other parting thoughts?
I don't know. I just say hiring a contractor is just like buying real estate. You got to check it out. You know, you don't go buy a house without checking it out. You shouldn't hire a contractor without checking them out. So always do your due diligence, whether it's buying real estate or hiring a contractor. And once you find a good contractor, it's good to get your relationships built with them and just try to keep them busy. And you can lose them if you don't keep them busy. I hope I answered most people's questions. Again, I'm on Facebook. My name is David Rhodes. You can friend me. REHQ Zone is another one we have on Facebook. If you have any questions, if you want me to share you my Craigslist ads that I run for contractors, I'd be more than happy to do it. I'll share my performance contract with you. Performance contract came directly from Matt. I did some training with Matt. I might have messed it around a little bit, but it was one of his contracts. Other than that, I guess I'm out. Good talking to everybody. Hope I answered some questions. If we didn't, just hit me up on Facebook, ask me questions personally. I'd be more than happy to try to help you out all I can. All right, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.